Tonight. He's a member of the House Armed Services, Education, and Veterans Affairs Committees. He's introduced a resolution that condemns China for its actions and failure to warn the world of the deadly virus they unleashed upon the globe. And he is also demanding reparations from China. Congressman, good to have you with us. Let's start with this split in the White House, the apparent split. This is America first. This is buy American, hire American. Why would there be a split?
Well, Lou, your guess is as good as mine. This president was elected in 2016 because he pledged to be tough on China, and he's done that. He's the first president of my lifetime to hold China accountable. The American people aren't asking politicians to hold China accountable. They're demanding it from members of Congress to the president. I have no doubt the president will continue down the path of holding China accountable. I hope he will sign Peter Navarro's resolution to stop purchasing medical equipment from China. As you know, the DOD and the VA are the two largest healthcare networks in America, and they purchase a vast amount of their medical supplies from China. We should immediately start with that and stop purchasing that equipment coming out of China and purchase American equipment instead.
The presidents who preceded President Trump, what they did to this country, and I have been writing about it for 20 years, the outsourcing of American jobs by the millions, the offshoring of production, leaving this country dependent on supply chains 6,000 miles away, not only China, but India, Southeast Asia, I mean, Europe as well, for crying out loud. That kind of idiocy is typical of what this president has had to confront. It's almost inconceivable. You can see the absolute incredulous look on his face when he has to explain why a trade deficit is damaging to the U.S. economy, the American people, what it does to the savings rate and what it cuts away from our economic growth. And he has to do it with supply lines. He's got the Chamber of Commerce in his office telling him what a grand idea it is to lift the tariffs, for crying out loud. He has more foreign agents representing China in his office, trying to get into his office, lobbying for China, than I believe of individual corporations in this country. It's that bad.
You say it well, Lou. The American people get it. Hoosiers get it. My dad, who's retired from a factory here in Fort Wayne who made axles all of his life, he gets it. He knows that China is the biggest threat, both economically and militarily, to the United States of America that we face today. And that's why he voted for Donald Trump in 2016, why he's going to vote for him again. But holding China accountable, Lou, is about making sure that something like this never happens to America again. China has stolen our intellectual property. They've stolen our jobs. And they've given us the third coronavirus now, the third pandemic. If you think about it, the last three, H1N1, SARS, and now COVID-19, all started in China and spread around the world. And today we're dealing with the effects of that. We're dealing with our economy being so intertwined and entangled in China's economy. We're seeing the economic effects of that we can never allow to happen again. And that's why we must hold China accountable. There are a lot of ways that we can do that. And I want to partner with this president, as well as a growing number of my colleagues in the Congress who are introducing pieces of legislation to hold China accountable. There's a lot more of that to come. And I believe President Trump will continue to lead the way to hold China accountable. The first thing that he can do is sign that executive order that Peter Navarro has drafted and put on his desk.
Yeah, but at the president's order, of course. Let's talk about the NIH. We find out the NIH has been sponsoring Chinese scientists, giving them grants. This is just nuts. We find out that the CDC has been assisting the Chinese government in the creation of their centers for disease control. We find out that we have got exchange programs of all sorts with the Chinese that are absolute. I mean, in addition to their theft of $600 billion in intellectual property, 30 years of consecutive trade deficits with China, This is just mind-boggling. And now we find out that the Department of Justice, they have allowed bail for Charles Lieber, the chairman of the chemistry department at Harvard, who was taking, well, millions of dollars from the Chinese, operating as effectively an agent for them, charged with recruiting students, not for Harvard, not for the United States, but for China, for crying out loud. And this is going on not just at Harvard, but all around the country in some of our most prestigious institutions of higher learning. It's outrageous.
Lou, there's a lot more to learn about what's been going on at the National Institute of Health, and that's why Congressman Mike Gallagher from Wisconsin and I signed a letter today and sent it to Dr. Francis Collins, whose leadership I've questioned before for steering taxpayer dollars toward embryonic stem cell research. Now we find out that a lot of the grants have been steered toward Chinese entities too. So we're demanding answers about that. We've recently learned that some of those taxpayer dollar grants have gone to this lab in Wuhan, the virology lab. Fortunately, President Trump has halted those grants from going there in the future. But I want to know how many other grants have gone to Chinese entities that are not serving the best interests of the United States of America, and that's why we signed the letter that we did. When we get answers about that, Lou, we will let you and your listeners know.
I appreciate it, Congressman. And